Okay, our 5+5 game today is white against a 2029, and we finally get a Caro-Kann. I don't believe we've had one of these yet, maybe once, but compared to the French knight t2, we play knight c3 because black sometimes does strange things to defend the pawn on d5 instead of taking. But when they do, okay, we get into our modern line with the early knight f6. So the idea is we want to play bishop d3 before we play knight e2. But to do that, we have to play c3 first to protect d4, and then we can play bishop d3, and then we achieve our setup with knight e2. So if you are familiar with the Caro-Kann material, you should recognize this. And then bishop g4, I don't recall being good. But are we playing f3 or h3? I believe this is supposed to help white, especially if we're planning to launch pawns on the king side. What's the main move supposed to be? Is it like rook e8, then castles, then something with h6, g6, or it might even be queen c2 ahead of castling? Actually, yeah, it's definitely that to see what they do with their kingside pawns. But this one, f3 feels like it's asking a lot. But if they have to retreat their bishop, it's probably not to g4, encouraging pushes. And if it goes back, we're trying for queen c2, maybe just bishop d2 and castle queenside. But we can probably do similar by playing h3. I don't know why f3 feels right to me, but we're going to explore it. Because we do have the expectation, there's a very good chance we do just send kingside pawns. So setting up g4 in some way, I'm not opposed to, and we could... Okay, h5 I don't think is going to be good. I think that should help us rather than hurt us, but I was thinking we can play bishop f4. It's protected, we get to play knight takes. I would not mind trading this other bishop, which we could also play knight f4 first. But then we're getting slow about castling, and we risk something with rook or queen. But if we do it right away, we can castle after that. Only question will be if they come out towards a5, but that shouldn't really work. Like, I'm thinking of something with b3 to trap a bishop on a2 if they ever capture. So I think we're happy to do this and castle queenside as described. Yes, do we feel like initiating a bishop trade? I don't think so. I think we'd rather have them bring our knight forwards, but we do have to castle or else I think bishop takes will be a problem. So just to check, if they play bishop takes, b3, if they play queen a5, I think even king b2 at that point. And then the other, or one of the rooks comes over to a1, so no, I don't think they can take that for sure, and if they can't do that, then I feel like we will be happy about this setup. We can take a move to play king b1. Knight on e2 should never be loose, it's twice protected currently. Okay, so that makes a threat to take on f4. Probably we just take the bishop. We could play queen d2, which I think I might do anyways though. Like if we went takes, takes, I'd want to play queen d2. So I think in the same philosophy of I want them to take me, I might prefer this, because bishop h7 isn't going to be useful, I don't think, but you could imagine a case where the bishop comes back, queen comes in front, and then that's a much bigger threat. Shouldn't change anything with regards to bishop takes a2. I'd still like to play king b1 if I'm given a move. Ah, no, it does change something, because I can't play b3 right now. That was an oversight. Yeah, I got lost between ideas. I wasn't paying attention to both at the same time. Okay. Well, then we'll have to do a little bit of scrambling. I think b4 is hasty, probably just makes the problem worse. So I think we should take the opportunity to rush on the king side, since we are giving away some material. Let's go with g4. Sadly, I can't pretend that was intentional. Not even to my opponent. I think I took too long for that to seem like a bluff. I can imagine queen a5 again, try to move the bishop, give some check, but I think I'll be able to play bishop b1, and if bishop b3, this rook is likely moving anyways. I'll just have to pick where. Yeah, I haven't made a lot of early mistakes in these games, I don't think. I played a game against an 1800 who played e6, d6, and then a hippo, so I didn't feel like that was worth posting. That was about a 20-something move win. But we got a little more work to do here. Yeah, I didn't think I would get anything out of rook g1, because they take again. It's close to being able to sacrifice something on g7, but I think if they traded bishops first, that wouldn't really come to anything. I think we'll stick with pawn. And I'm wondering also, maybe there's something with rook takes e2 that I haven't been careful enough about, but I think I'd be able to play bishop takes d6, and the trades favor me, so we will continue with that, or at the very least it'll be even trade-offs if they go rook takes e2, d2, d1. Which I guess wouldn't be amazing for me, but I really don't want to take on d6, I think. Again, same concept it's been the whole time, is I want to be able to move this knight off e2 as fast as possible. I think they're probably thinking about it again. And I don't know if I can even play queen takes rook there. Possibly. But okay. Knight c7, I think, probably makes that a realistic threat, because their queen would be protected at the end. So I do need to show real awareness of that now. I could play rook f1. I'm still really resisting taking if I can help it. Guess we'll go rook f1, and then I want to play g5 if I can. And even if that ends up being a second pawn sacrifice, I think I'd be okay with that, to open more space towards their king. Like, I do wish my king were safer in pursuing that, but they haven't shown a lot of inclination yet to come after my king. And bishop takes a6 wasn't a real thought either, I don't believe. Because that opens the b file for one of their rooks and probably makes things worse. I think more likely either c5 or b5 and then c5 is what they would be playing towards. But we've really got this stare down over here. I really don't want to touch any of these pawns. Again, it probably just makes it worse for me. So mostly just it feels right to be playing g5. I think adding the h-pawn is pretty slow. If I had to, I could turn to it. But more likely we're sticking with the f and g files. So they would like to double. I think if they do, then I might just play knight g3. So do we just go with g5, bishop takes, knight takes, pawn takes, knight h5? I think there's promise there. Honestly, I kind of like that better than if they take right away. But maybe there too. Takes, attacks the rook. If they play f6, tough to say taking. Always knight takes or ever rook takes? I don't know if rook takes will be right, because pawn takes, we have to move the rook, then f6 is a lot more solid. We're never sacrificing a rook for pawns, so it would have to be the knight. And I have been thinking that if they double rooks, the entry squares are all covered for me. Or at least rook e2 isn't possible, and rook e3 shouldn't be all that helpful. Maybe to block out the queen it could be, but nothing that I consider critical currently. And then the question will just be if they play f6. My first thought was h4. Possibly you could play knight takes f6. Takes, rook takes. g5 would be hanging. Maybe there's rook g6. Could even play h4 after that. There might be something there. And if I don't, then I'd probably play bishop c2. Sort of threaten something with b3, but mostly, if you remember, I wanted to play queen d3 and then get my queen in front. This, I don't know if it can be right, because queen takes g5 is going to threaten mate. So I will have to act fast, because I don't want to let them take more than once. Like pawn takes d4, if I need one tempo, I can do something with that. And okay, knight takes f6 or bishop takes g6. So knight check, king g7, maybe rook g1, but I think I'm lacking that one tempo. Maybe not. Compared to bishop takes, takes, takes. If they block, I'm happy. I have two open files. I don't know if the material settles perfectly for me, but I think we have to go for that, no? I think so. And I'm helped that pawn takes, if they have to play pawn takes and not queen takes, of course that keeps the c-file closed for that one extra move. So yeah, I'm not 100% convinced this would be winning, but I'll have all four of my pieces pointing right at their open king. And this bishop shouldn't be able to help. Like, it covers f7, overprotects g8 maybe, but isn't great. Then knight on e6 obviously can't help either. So as far as classic requirements for an attack, it should be good. And then I'm just thinking, if they trade everything, I'm good with that, or good enough with that. And this one, is this just mating? Because if they block with the rook, rook f8, they do get to block with that bishop. So I think we start with this. And then I want to play queen f6. They can't block with the queen, so it has to be the rook. And then I want to play rook g1. And now I think I can play rook takes, because they still can't play queen takes. Does that quite do it? Maybe not quite. They could even like king g8, actually. What can I do with this? Let me do this once first. Can I play rook g1 again? Very low on time, but this should win material, right? Because they can't protect the rook again. There are no good checks. This is 5 plus 5, so I must have been down to 0.8 there. But if I'm not mistaken, at worst we play queen takes, then rook takes, rook is protected, and we're up, I think, in exchange with even pawns, in the very worst case. So that might be better than queen takes, but I think queen takes always works. Yeah, so something like this, for example. Okay. And they can't attack the knight to dislodge the rook, so we can take either of the pawns. I think maybe this one first, or does it matter? Now let's keep the passed pawn, and they still can't protect this pawn very easily, because we can move the rook. I guess that is kind of easy, but then I get to play d5. So one check, and then get moving with this pawn. Not quite a trapped bishop, but do we keep pushing, or do we need the knight's help first? It'll take a little bit of time to convert this, because I don't want to let their king get too close, but that's hard to fully prevent. Maybe just rook a8, actually. Or d6 first, so there's no knight c7. No, we'll go with this. Because then I'd be able to take on b7 as well, and that's fine. And bishop c4, then I'll happily play d6. But basically I just need to win one more pawn to feel good about this, and it probably does end up being 2. So let's come back to a fully protected square, not waste more time as they chase my knight. As I said, we will happily push that, threatening to play d7 now, which the bishop kind of has to go back, or bishop e6. And then I said we could take here. Checks don't worry me. Rook's too far away for any kind of fork. And then I guess we'll come up with the king. Or, no, that doesn't quite work. Rook a4 or a5, there's b6. So a little slower than I would like. I might be missing some kind of detail here, but now it looks like they have 2 pieces hanging. And I don't think they can set up a knight fork either. Well, definitely not, because after king takes, king on light square, rook on dark square can never be forked together. Cool. So we survived a big scare there. I'll check exactly how much the computer disliked me giving up that pawn. Because, okay, we got Caro-Kann, so we're good through here. I believe I played this correctly with knight e2, but then bishop g4. I spent some time deciding if I wanted to play f3, h3. I don't feel like we want to straight castle against it. I think I like one of the pawn pushes. But I wonder if there's supposed to be too high of a risk to f3. Because I would need to be able to castle queenside safely to be really happy about it. And it felt like I was a move slow up to here, but then I think here, like, white is probably slightly better if we just take the bishop and then play king b1. I think retrospectively that is maybe simply what I should do. Like, just recognize, okay, be careful about this pawn, don't be too careless about it. Because I was thinking that my other option was bishop takes, queen d2, still try to get something to f4, but it's the same thing. Bishop takes a2 when I can't play b3 with the queen's support. So I think they're probably fair to take that, but I wonder exactly how much compensation white has. Because they definitely didn't create anything fast on the king side. We'll have to check these rook takes e2 tactics. Because the point is, if I take with either the bishop or the queen, there's bishop takes f4. And I would have to go through bishop takes, rook takes, bishop takes, and then let's say rook takes. And I think at that point it's 2 bishops versus bishop and knight, but they still have their extra pawn. So I think reasonably black probably could go through with that. I'd still have some decent compensation with a bishop pair, and their extra pawn is not currently great, so it's probably not that bad, but that might be better than letting white continue with this attack. And that's why with knight a6, I felt I had to be more aware of that because I don't know what a good move is. We just play like h4 and they go rook takes. Then if we go bishop takes, rook takes, bishop takes, rook takes, whichever takes, then their knight's here, so they could play knight takes bishop and be up a piece. So I believe that calculation was correct. So we overprotected the bishop, so rook takes knight, now just bishop takes, and then this is double protected, so it's fine. Rook e7, we get to keep pushing this, because if I let things go slow, then I'm just going to be down a pawn, so we have to make something happen faster. And I believe this is where I referenced, I thought pawn takes pawn might actually be a little harder for white. If we just get this bishop kind of in the way of the queen still. Whereas after takes, I was able to clear out pieces pretty nicely. Like takes, knight h5. For the moment, I am down 2 pawns, but we can remember where the game went. There's currently this threat of queen takes. They, I guess, didn't want to play f6, where I probably would have played knight takes f6. Hadn't 100% decided, but that also felt promising, and then I think maybe they just didn't appreciate that this was a mate threat or something like that. And then again, we had these tough questions. You have time ticking down and you're tempted to sacrifice a piece. I think knight f6 is probably good, and I think at worst is probably a draw if I really wanted it. Because if they go one of these ways, then queen h6 is mate. So they have to come forward. And then worst case, we come back, give a check. And they either have to put their king where it can be checked again by the knight or by the queen on h6. And I don't think I see anything better even looking at it now. In either direction. Knight f6, king g7. I wanted to pile up a rook on g6, but I wasn't sure that was enough either. So like knight f6, king g7, probably this rook. They take here, we play bishop takes. I wanted to make that work too, and it might, because if they play pawn takes, queen takes, we're in a similar case where this king probably should be getting mated, but after all of that, there is still this bishop covering g8, which could be confounding. I'm not sure. I might just, again, have enough pieces that it works out great for white. And then here, yeah, we'll have to ask the computer for help, because I don't know exactly what accuracy would look like. I think it should be queen h6, but then again there's that bishop, so without it this would be an easy mate, like rook takes, queen takes, but then they block and we get this kind of shuffling. That could also, I guess, have been a draw if we play queen f6, they block with the rook, queen h6, and then they block with the bishop, actually. And I don't really want to trade down like this queen and this knight for the queen and the bishop, especially if a pair of rooks gets traded. We'd have rook and an h-pawn against knight and bishop, most likely. However, these pawns resolve. So we did that, and then realized that I think it was right to pile up, or I think it was after I thought about it a little more closely. Here. And yeah, I think then from there it was successful, and then I'll skip ahead to our analysis. So okay, Caro-Kann with early knight f6. We went with bishop d3, knight e2. So that is other. Takes, take, c6, knight c3, take, take, early knight f6. Take that, play c3 first, then bishop d3, then knight e2. Okay, but they played bishop g4, which we can see is a clear second move. Gets played a lot, so we should remember this. Seems like a lot of people do play f3, but my notes do say just play queen c2. So that means right here, our recommendation is just to play a basic queen c2, which is more in line with what we are intending to do. What actually was black's main move, did I say? Was it rook e8 there? Yeah, rook e8. Oh, wrong button. Sorry, let me go through that again. Not knight f6. Having some difficulties. Diva, knight c3, take, take, then knight f6. And then, yeah, down this main line, if they play rook e8, we play queen c2, and yeah, we intend to castle kingside most likely, but they have to do something with these kingside pawns. So that's what we're trying to do with our queen c2, the way the game went as well. Or could have gone. That they still have to do something over there, and then, yeah, if they give us a weakness to play against, like even here you can see g6, it popped up with f3 here is going to be a better idea. Partly because whenever there's a pawn on g6, you can't retreat to h5, because g4 just traps a bishop. And if not, that gives us something extra to play against with h4 and h5. So f3, how bad is that exactly? Probably call that an inaccuracy, but only if they play bishop h5. Okay. So that, I believe I was planning g4, but I'm not 100% sure. Because their pawns are still going to be really solid, which is the big difference from if they had played g6. So we aren't actually getting a lot to play against yet, and we are being quite slow to castle. So that should give you some idea of why we don't commit to that just yet. We make them break up their pawns before we do ourselves. But they didn't do that, so we get to keep a small advantage. Bishop f4 is okay, maybe knight f4 was a little bit better. And if they play, let's say, rook e8, then yeah, we just castle kingside, get away from that, and just be happy that we're going to be able, I believe, to take this bishop. Because I don't think it ever goes back to d7, blocks the knight, blocks everything else. So yeah, that would have been a little bit stronger. Don't have to worry about the f3 pawn, doesn't really give them any other way to get at our king. With bishop first. Castling kingside, maybe still slightly better, but queenside's okay. They could take that on a2 right away. And then we play b3. Okay, then we get something similar, where maybe white's pieces are a little loose already. So when it says rook e2, that's because it will remove the defender of f4. And then that would also give them the option of taking on b3. Though I guess the way they're doing it, yeah, I would have to go like this, and then they can still grab that pawn, and then it resolves whatever this is, a rook for a knight and 2 pawns, I think. So close enough to even. Queen c7. Yeah, we were a little bit careless of that. Like I said, my retrospective was take, take, king b1. Thought we might be slightly better, but if they played b5, okay. A couple people haven't done that. They've played knight d7, but if they play b5, they get to go a little faster. We're not quite in time for g4, starting our own pawn rush, so I can imagine they have some possibilities on the queen side. But they took, which was correct, and maybe we are just supposed to trade bishops? I don't know, that didn't feel right to me. If we take, take, knight g3, come towards e4 and f5. Okay. Oh, and then we want to play g4 after that. Get a knight to a more aggressive square and then break forward. So what's our difference with playing g4? Do we still get into a problem with rook takes e2? Not a problem exactly. They could also play h4, which is an interesting point, because remember I said I wanted to open especially the g and f files, and they don't need to let me do that. Then how about here? If they play h4, is it just that knight f5? In worst case, we take that, or even g3. But just in general, yeah. It's easier to attack them when we've brought our knight around. Okay. But they definitely helped me by taking, and I guess I can show this as well. So I would have had to take on d6, because remember, they're really threatening our bishop takes bishop now. So takes, both queens are hanging, takes, 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 all of that, and then, yeah, close to equal, but black still has an extra pawn, so I wouldn't feel terrible if I were black either. But as I said, I do have the bishop pair in compensation for that. But takes, and yeah, okay, again, we are really supposed to take this bishop, just get rid of that looseness. And then we do get to play something with rook g1. Okay, I wasn't sure that anything with this would be working, but I'm seeing an idea. Like, first of all, if they take, I have to imagine queen h6 is something in the air, but doesn't like it right away, or it's having some trouble with it as it processes. Okay, or knight g3 up to f5 again. That makes sense too. The knights are biggest non-contributing piece. It's sort of the rook in the corner, but compare that to f takes. They could have taken on e2. They could do a lot of things, it seems like, and be slightly better. But yeah, okay, it is pretty close to balance still, so it looks like the worst it got was about this half pawn if they had not let me open up the king side. But then we had some bouncing back and forth, and then rook e7 is a big mistake, because yeah, it's just too slow for what this position is asking for. They need to be a lot more scared of what white has a little too slowly been building up on the king side. So yeah, for example, c5, try to open white's king in response right away. Would I have played g5? Probably g5 first. But then even if they just take here, f5 again, just keeping things as closed as possible. I mean, it's really hard to keep track of things in a position like this, especially to commentate live, and even now, I don't want to spend too much of your time going through all of this. But yeah, okay, I just was never clued into the idea of this knight g3, knight f5, which, as we've seen a few times, would have been really strong, but g5 is number 2. And then maybe even their last chance to play f5, I don't know. But okay, this is very good for white now. So remember we said I am down 2 pawns, but computer-wise it looks like I am up the equivalent of a piece, and then c5, yeah, is just a complete disaster for them. So if they had played f6, I didn't think I was ever playing rook takes, but that's really funny to show up. What does our mate pattern look like if they just take that? Knight takes, king has to move. I mean, this is a tough one, because when the king moves, we're taking a pawn, but it's not with check. And you like your attacks to be moves with check, because it's just way more open-ended for black otherwise, but it's just another case, even more so than the game went, of just trusting that the black king is going to be wide open and without defense. And let me compare that quickly to knight takes, because that is likely what I would have ended up doing. And we just get a cold 0.0, or close to it. But they have to play rook g7, so preemptively stopping rook g6 and queen takes g5. And then, okay, that rook is a little oddly placed, but seems to be doing a good enough job. My computer's running a little slow today, so I'm not getting great depth on this, but I mean, it's acting a little more like a human than not fully understanding what's happening here. But yeah, then we just have way too many pieces pointing at the black king. Queen f6 is a fantastic move, now that it's showing that, because if they take, then we get a really quick mate here. King f8, queen h8. So that's a really excellent point, actually. That would have been nice to spot. But we took with the bishop just to really rip it open, and our other thought was if we'd played knight f6. Okay, we can play rook g1, we can of course repeat, but I think my main consideration was this. Again, it's a little open-ended, we're not playing with a check, but we're saying hypothetically this, and felt like this should be winning, but wasn't 100% sold, just because this bishop covers g8, but okay, no, because my rook and my queen are doubled. So that should help me in some case, maybe, but we'll leave it there. If you want to pause or go back and calculate some of the possibilities for yourself, go for it. But this should be good enough, just not 100% accurate. Eventually we come in through g1, which is great, and then, okay, we can keep that rook pinned. Rook g6 is another very impressive attacking move, and then we just want to play rook h6, which currently would be mate. And black's slowest move is bishop to b1, trying to block on h7, but of course we can just take that. So no good answer for black, it looks like. We took that, repeated once, because they didn't really have a way out. I think I briefly thought, what if they play king to g8? And I don't know what I would have done with that. I guess we can play knight f6, force the king to the d file, and then a discovered check should win the queen. But would have had to notice that in low time. But then we got to this rook g1, and yeah, again, that is good enough. And okay, yeah, the only good move, but more than sufficient, is to take that. And then I don't imagine there will be that much to say about the endgame technique. I don't think I was that sloppy about it. Maybe imperfect, but never anything of great concern. And then, yeah, I was just being a little slow bringing the king forward, but once we win a piece, then, yeah, that pretty much seals it. Okay. So, our takeaways from this game are we got to test this Caro-Kann, and we are really emphasizing queen c2 and how useful that is to really encourage black to weaken their king side, and then that will help white quite significantly as the game proceeds. Instead, we got some inaccuracies both ways, but we ultimately did get to see where white's attacking force just completely overwhelmed black's. It was more black than me, actually, who was not careful enough about what was actually important in the position, which was that all of my pieces are very suddenly pointing at their black king, and then they weren't able to defend, even as I took a little bit of extra time to finish off. Okay, thank you for watching our Caro-Kann game. Let me know if you have any questions or comments, and we'll see you for the next video soon.